Fronius and BYD, the perfect storage solution. Welcome everyone to our webinar today. Before we start, just want to quickly make sure if you all can hear me, just please raise your hand if you can hear me so we can continue with the presentation. Great, thanks. My name is Nima Badji. I work as Technical Sales Advisor at the Business Unit Solar Energy at Fronius, Sweden, together with my colleague William Petzen, who works also as Technical Sales Advisor at the Business Unit Solar Energy at Fronius, Sweden. We will be the speakers of this webinar today, and beside us, we have our colleague Hans Pelzer from the team Trainings and Education from our headquarters, Fronius International, all the way from Austria. Hans will be responsible for the chat today, so if you have any questions, just feel free to leave your question in the chat, and Hans will be taking care of your questions. On the other end of the line, we have special guest speaker today, Alvaro Garcia, Commercial Director at the EFD Systems BYD battery box, and he will talk about BYD batteries installation and commissioning. Moving forward with the agenda for today, we start with the Fronius Gen 24 inverters, of course, the product itself, the most important features of the product, flexibility in design, which combination possibilities we have with different inverter types and different BYD batteries, HVS and HVM. Then talking about installation of the inverter, and after installation, we are going to talk about the commissioning of the inverter. Then Alvaro will continue with the BYD battery box, HVS and HVM models, the installation and commissioning parts. Fronius Gen 24, they are available in two different versions, Primo and Symo versions. The Primo is the single-phase hybrid inverter with 2 MPPTs. First MPPT, we have the possibility to connect 2 strings up to 22 amps, and the second MPPT, 1 string up to 12 amps. The power class for Primo versions are from 3 up to 6 kilowatts, and the battery input, 1 battery input up to 22 amps. Then we have the Symo version, which is a 3-phase hybrid inverter with 2 MPPTs again. The first MPPT up to 25 amps. So here again, we have possibility to connect 2 strings up to 25 amps. And the second MPPT, we have the possibility to connect 1 string up to 12.5 amps. Power class here is from 6 to 10 kilowatts. We are even going to launch our new inverters, new Symo inverters with lower power class from 3 to 6 kilowatts that we are going to talk a little bit more in details in the coming slides. Here again, we have 1 battery connection possibility up to 22 amps. As mentioned, the Gen 24, Symo Gen 24 power class 6 to 10 that we just talked about with 2 MPPTs. The first MPPT, as mentioned, 25 amps, and the second MPPT up to 12.5 amps with full backup and PV point on board as backup options that we are going to talk a little bit more in details in the coming slides. Before our Gen 24 models, we already had our Symo hybrid model, power class 3 to 5 kilowatts with 1 MPPT up to 16 amps. And here we had full backup on board, but no PV point. Then the new models we are going to launch in a few weeks that we have 2 MPPTs, 3 to 5 kilowatts again with 2 MPPTs. The first one, 12.5, one single string, and the second MPPT again, 12.5. And here we have PV point on board, but no full backup. If you continue, another product which is called Smart Meter. Of course, if you want to have a full control over your production in the household, you want to know exactly how much you've been producing with your PV system, how much you are using in the household, how much you're feeding into the grid, and how much you're buying from the grid. Then you need another product which is called Smart Meter to install it in your installation. And together with the Smart Meter, you have the communication between the inverter itself and to the Smart Meter. And Smart Meter sends the data to our online monitoring tool, SOLAR.WEB. There you can have full visualization and analysis of the whole production in your household. So this way you can increase your self-sufficiency by knowing exactly how much energy you've been producing, how much energy you've been feeding into the grid. So together with this smart meter, you can just do the simulation on SOLAR.WEB, and in case you need, you can add the battery into the system to save that energy you wanted to feed into the grid into the battery instead. We talk about batteries, compatibilities. They are BYD batteries, HVS and HVM models, which are compatible with Gen 24 models. So when you install your system in the beginning, if you don't have any battery in the system, it's fine. You just install Gen 24 in the beginning. Then after a while, you have the simulation on SOLAR.WEB. You know exactly how much consumption you have in the household. If you have surplus energy that you don't want to feed into the grid, you want to increase your own consumption, then you add and retrofit the system with BYD batteries, and this way you increase your self-sufficiency. Batteries which are compatible, as mentioned, with BYD battery, with the Gen 24 inverters are HVS and HVM models. HVS with the capacity from 5.1 up to 10.2 kilowatt hours, from 2 up to 4 modules, and HVM from 11 up to 22.1 kilowatt hours, from 4 up to 8 modules. The difference between HVS and HVM is the capacity. Of course, we can see that HVS has lower capacity compared to HVM. Also, the voltage HVS has got the higher voltage than the HVM models. You can, of course, increase the capacity of the batteries also. As you can see in the picture, you can just add more modules to the battery. So each module has a capacity of 2.6 kilowatt hour compared to the HVM models with each module has the capacity of 2.8 kilowatt hours. But more in details, of course, Alvar are going to talk in the coming slides. Combination matrix, of course, we've listed on our website which inverter you're choosing and which battery will be compatible with just that inverter size. So if you choose an inverter Symo Gen 24, for example, you can see the combination possibility and exactly which battery would be compatible with that inverter. You can also use our Fronius Solar Configurator, our designing tool. So you can also, that way you choose the right inverter, you know right away which battery will be compatible with that inverter. And that way you continue with the sizing of your system. When it comes to maximum charge and discharging power, different combination possibilities. If we have the Symo Gen 24 10 kilowatts, for example, combined with a BYD battery HVM 22.1 kilowatt hour, you can have a maximum charge and discharge of up to 9 kilowatts, this combination. Or even to HVS 10.2 combined with Symo Gen 24 10 again, we have a maximum of 9 kilowatt hour charge and discharge, this combination. Same again with the Symo models, the new ones with the lower power classes, 3 to 5 kilowatts. If we combine HVS 10.2 with Symo Gen 24, 5 kilowatts, then we have a maximum charge and discharge possibility up to 5.12 kilowatts. And the same again with HVM 22.1 combined with Symo Gen 24, 5 kilowatts, we have 5.12 kilowatts charge, maximum charge and discharge. Here is a research study done by the HTW Berlin University, Storage Inspection 2020, and they have compared different inverter manufacturers and different battery combination compatibility. And according to their research, Fronius Symo Gen 24 10 combined with BYD battery box HV secured the first place with a system performance index of 94%. The research is available on the website. If you're more interested, of course, you can go to the website and read more in detail about the research and their differences. They have done the comparison. The technology that we've been using in our hybrid inverters, multi-plot technology, and which means that you are having battery in the system and you are supplying the household. As you can see, you are charging the battery at the same time, and you're taking from the battery and supplying the household the surplus energy you have in the battery, and you need more loads you need to supply more loads in the household. And at the same time, you can even charge the battery from the AC side. So that function, you just need to activate in the web interface of the inverter that you define that you also want to charge the battery from the grid. And all this can happen at the same time, which is called multi-flow technology, which we've been using even in our previous hybrid inverters. You can even add and retrofit this existing system with another inverter on the AC side. You AC couple the existing system. The communication still between the smart meter is with the hybrid inverter, because hybrid needs to know if there is a surplus energy going to the grid, and hybrid decides that that surplus energy can be taken and charge the battery instead. Then having this additional inverter on the AC side, even if it's not a hybrid inverter, in this case, this can play as a hybrid inverter in this installation. There is no direct communication between the smart meter and the Symo inverter here, but as soon as there is a surplus energy coming from the normal Symo going to the grid, then the smart meter knows it is the surplus energy. Then starts communication with the hybrid inverter, and hybrid store that energy in the battery instead. In this case, you can even remove PV from the DC side, and you can connect them to the second inverter on the AC side, so you still continue producing. PV point and full backup. We talked about the backup function we have on our different inverters. So PV point is a power outlet connected directly to the inverter. No activation is needed. So it is on board on all the new Gen 24 inverters. To use this function, you don't need to have a battery, but of course you can combine it with a battery also to increase the efficiency. The PV point is activated in case of grid failure. So as soon as the grid is gone, the power outlet is activated, and you don't need to activate it manually. As mentioned, it's activated automatically, and no additional installation is required. So you supply the power outlet up to 3 kilowatts or 13 amps, and it's for a single phase power outlet. And how does that work in case of grid failure? If you don't have any battery in the system, it's not mandatory to have a smart meter. So in case of grid failure, we have separation from the grid, and as long as the sun is shining, you're supplying the power output from your PV. And if you have a battery in the system, of course, you can even charge the battery and take it from the battery to supply the power outlet up to 3 kilowatts. Then we have the full backup option, and there you can supply the whole household. Here, it's automatic activation. It says 90 seconds switch over time. So it means that after when the grid fails, you have 90 seconds after the full backup is activated. And there you can supply the whole household up to 10 kilowatts. And how does that work? You have, of course, smart meter, because we have a battery in the system. So the hybrid needs to know if there is a surplus energy in the system to charge the battery or take from the battery to supply the household. Even here, we need an additional emergency backup power switch from NVTech to make sure there is no supply to the grid in case of grid failure. So in case of grid failure, again, smart meter communicates with a hybrid. There is no electricity available from the grid. Then we have the separation from the grid. The NVTech box makes sure there is no supply back to the grid for security reason. Then we have all the backup supply in the household, nothing connected to the grid. So we supply the household, we charge the battery, and we take from the battery to the household. It says the allowed runtime in backup mode is 15%, which means that, just as an example, if we are having the system running for 100 days, for example, and the grid is down after 100 days, you can continue using the system in full backup mode for another 15 days. And why do we say that? It's a matter of warranty. Of course, you can even continue after 15 days, but if something happens with the components in the inverter, that you've been using the inverter in the full backup mode for than 15%, then no, it's not covered under the warranty. When it comes to the third party and e-mobility, I just want to hand over to my colleague William, who will continue with the presentation. I just want to give you control, William, so you can continue with the presentation.
All right, I think I have control now. Thanks, Nima. I will continue with a few other points regarding the Gen 24. And the first thing we are going to talk about is the third party and also the e-mobility possibilities with the Gen 24. And what we have done with the Gen 24 is that let's see. Can anyone hear me? If anybody can hear me, can you raise the hands and go to webinar? Yeah, perfect. Thank you. We will go into the third party and the e-mobility accessories to the Gen 24. And what we have done is that we have made the Gen 24 with open interfaces, which makes it easy to integrate into other systems. Other systems could be home automations and also electrical cars, and also integration of heat pumps to a Gen 24. So to give you an example of these different possibilities, we have possibility to connect the Gen 24 through LAN or wireless internet, VLAN. We also have Modbus and also the possibility to connect it to a Sunspec system. And we also have the digital iOS that we could connect to pretty much anything. We have some examples in the pictures. A lot of people use the digital iOSs to connect it to perhaps a heat pump, so that we will start the heat pump when we have solar energy, or we will start the cleaning system of a pool, or whatever other electrical components that we want to start. The parameters for this is set in the inverter, and we can set it based on time, we can set it based on date, we can set it on pretty much anything that we want. And the purpose of these interfaces is that we want to consume as much solar energy as possible. The Gen 24 is a very flexible inverter. So we have made some changes to this one from the earlier models. We actually managed to lower the starting DC voltage to 80. And that means that we can basically build a string from 3 panels all the way up to 24 panels. And by having the 80 volt DC, we can actually make sure that if we have a small area on the roof where we can only fit 3 or 4 panels, we can actually put it on a string and we have a complete string. If you want to oversize the Gen 24 Plus model, you can oversize it with 50%. So in case we have 15 kilowatt of solar panels on the roof, we can actually use a Gen 24 Plus 10 kilowatts and there will be no problem. So even if you have maybe an east-west roof, you can put on more panels to the Gen 24. All of our inverters are delivered with something that we call Dynamic Peak Manager. And in short words, that is an answer to the optimizers that you can put by the panels. So instead of having the optimization at the panels, we actually put it in the inverter. So basically what the inverter is doing is that it's searching for the whole IV curve to see that if we can boost this string up a little bit, maybe we can gain more solar production. And this is done all the time through the day. So even if it's early in the morning and we maybe not have that much solar power, we can actually help to boost the string so that our production starts earlier than it would have done in a normal case. The dynamic peak manager is working for the whole day and it's basically there to boost the strings. So even if we have some shading on some of the panels, we can still receive a very good effective string. When we come to the installation of the Gen 24 Plus, you can install it both indoors and outdoors. And we have some parameters that you have to follow when it comes to the degrees outside, but on the Symo model, it's -25 and all the way up to 60 degrees plus. You can also install it in high altitudes if you need to, up to 4,000 meters for the Primo and 3,000 meters for the Symo. It's very good actually to install the inverter outside because you often get a very good cooling of the inverter. What you shouldn't do is that you shouldn't install it on a south side wall. You should try to, if possible, to install it in the north side wall to avoid the inverter sitting in direct sunlight. Something else that is new on the Gen 24 is that we have 180 degrees quick locking screws. So it's very easy to actually remove the front cover and the DATCOM cover from the inverter. Because it's quick locking screws, you should not use a power tool to remove or to put anything back because it's easy damaging the screws if you use an electrical tool. Also, something that is good to know is that you have to put the DC switch on off in order to remove the front cover. We also made some adjustments to the connection area of the inverter. And what we have done is that we have put in clamps that you can remove from the inverter when you are installing the cables into it. So for an example, if you are installing the DC side of the inverter, that's on the left side, you can easily unclick the cable connection and you can stand outside the inverter and connect the cables. You click it and then you click it back up into the inverter. This is very, very good if you have a tight area. It could be maybe a dark area that gives you the possibility to connect everything from standing in front of the inverter instead of having to connect everything in the cable area. What we have on the left side is the DC connection for PV modules and the batteries. And in the middle of the connection area, we have the pilot. That is the new name for the communication card. And on the right side, you have the ground terminal block. And you also have the PV point that Nima mentioned earlier. And we also connect the AC cables on the top right corner. What we also have in this is a separation that you can see in the middle. That's also removable if you need to remove it while connecting everything. When it comes to commissioning of the Gen 24, you have the new Solar Start app. And as you can see, we also removed the display of the Gen 24. So to connect it, you have to use the touch button in the middle of the inverter. So if you press it one time, it will activate the Wi-Fi access point, just as the old Snap inverters. And when you have activated the Wi-Fi access point, you use the app to gain connection to the inverter. And what we have on the front of the inverter are two LED signs, so you can see exactly what mode the inverter is in. And if you see on the picture now, when we have a blue light blinking, that means we are actually in a connection process. So while we are doing this whole part, it's going to blink blue, and then when the inverter is actually put up to your router or your LAN cable, it will actually light blue constantly. So you can easily see on the diodes how the inverter is actually doing. And on the left side, where we see that it's a yellow light, you will have a different status to the inverter. If you have a green light, you know the inverter is doing fine. If you have a blinking yellow light, there's an error in the system. And if it's lighting red, you have a more serious error in the system. So by just looking at the colors of the LED, you can easily see how the inverter is doing. You can use the Solar Start app for commissioning, but you can also use the old way of commissioning the inverter by using a web browser, and the old IP address is the same. So either way, how you commission the inverter, you can do it in the way that you prefer. And what we recommend when you're commissioning a Gen 24 is to use the Solar Start app. And you can see on the different pictures how it's done. It's very simple. You simply pick the model that you want to commission. You make sure you get connection to the inverter, and then you put in the network. You choose the product, and then if you want to connect it to SOLAR.WEB, you do it right here in the app. So it's a whole new layout from the old application that we use. Also, something that is good to mention is that you can't commission inverters through SOLAR.WEB app like you could earlier. Now you have to use the Solar Start app to commission the inverter. When you have put up your Gen 24 to the internet, you can also connect it through our portal for monitoring the system, which is called SolarWeb. The good thing, when you have a BYD battery in the system, you're also required to have a smart meter. And by having the smart meter connected to your inverter and the battery, you can see exactly where the energy is going. So here's an example from a SolarWeb plant where you can see that right now we are producing 2.22 kilowatts, and we are basically using pretty much everything in the household, and we are also purchasing some from the grid in this case. When we have a BYD battery in the system, we can also see if we are loading the battery or taking energy from the battery through the household, or perhaps loading the battery from the grid. SolarWeb offers a lot of other perks, such as battery and on-pilot simulation, which could also be good if you haven't invested in a BYD battery yet, but you are planning on doing it in the future. SolarWeb can actually help you pick out the correct battery size, depending on how you use your energy in the household. Some other premium things that we also have is that you can get weather forecasts, and you can get reports and data analysts from the system. So you can actually monitor your system in various ways, depending on the data that you want to receive. Something else that is very important is that try to always put the system online if possible, because it's a much easier troubleshooting process if you run into problems. You can also remotely update the system, the data manager, and the inverter, so you don't have to be on site for that if you have it online. That was everything from my side. So I'm leaving over to Alvaro now from EFT Systems to tell you more about the BYD battery box. Thank you.
Hello. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Do I actually have access now to? No, I need to get access to have control to of the slides. There you go. I think I have it now. Ah, perfect. Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us today. We actually have quite a few people joining. I'm glad to see the interest on the combination. Actually, I think it's quite a strong combination as the as the title of the webinar shows. So I want to show you our side, see if you are convinced that the title of the webinar is actually correct. So before we speak about the battery itself, I think we need to speak about the company behind it. For starters, because this is a component with a long warranty, so you probably want to know that the company behind it is something that you can rely on, as something that will be, as a company will be here for the decade to come or similar. So BYD, it's mostly a business-to-business company, so it's not normally known for the general public as much, but it is actually, it has been for the last 2 decades, one of the main players in the renewable energy sector. And as is shown here with awards such as considering the CEO of BYD as one of the Green 30 for 2020. On the other hand, BYD considers as one of the top companies changing the world. In this case, was number 3 by Fortune. And also from a technological point of view, because BYD doesn't just produce batteries, they actually is at the forefront of battery technology. The new Blade battery, which you can find materials online, you can find videos online that shows how it works, how it compares with other batteries. It is considered that it's changing the paradigm of electric vehicles, as now you can use batteries that, well, safer batteries like the LFP, I'll speak about this later, and actually as a structural battery, so, for a vehicle, so you actually have to have less structural elements. So you can use the battery itself as a structure for the car. The other area that the reason why BYD is considered such a pioneer is because from very early on, it focused on generating the maximum amount of impact from a emissions reduction point of view. That's why they focus not only on electric cars, but actually identified that a small number of vehicles was actually generating a large amount of carbon emissions. And that's why they focus on having a global leadership on large industrial vehicles, public transport, or working vehicles, etc. So these large vehicles had a great emissions. So by electrifying those, it was possible to reduce carbon in a greater way. And these links to BYD's concept of the sustainability in their heart. So is the fact that BYD was created with the idea of creating a world of zero emissions and being able to provide all the necessary components to deliver that world of zero emissions. And that ecosystem requires clean energy production, clean energy storage, and clean energy usage for transportation. And BYD currently has available all the different components to make this ecosystem a reality. And also very, very important is not only the reduction of energy consumption and make energy consumption as clean as possible. It's actually another big point of sustainability is waste. And how do we deal with these components, these batteries at the end of their life? And BYD is highly committed to this concept, and that's why in their cell factories, every BYD cell factory has actually recycling facilities to be able to after a battery has gone through their different cycles of life, if it really doesn't have any more uses as it is, it can be recycled completely to get the materials and start over and build more batteries. Here in Europe, as in EFT systems, we take care of the end of life of batteries. So 100% of batteries delivered in Europe are being collected by us for sorting, for refurbishing when possible, repurposing or recycling. And continue with the idea of the world of zero emissions. BYD understood that this was going to pose several challenges, of course, from a R&D and a technology point of view, but also purely from a supply chain point of view. That's why from the very beginning they decided to be fully vertically integrated. So that's from raw materials. So if you look at the BYD manufacturing blueprint, there are actually some factories in the middle of China, in western side of China, And that's because they are right next to the Qinghai Lithium Lake, which BYD is part owner of, and it represents about 10% of the lithium reserves in the world. And on the opposite, all the way through research on materials, research on cells, there's several thousand engineers in BYD working on purely on cell technology, and then from manufacturing of components, packs, complete systems, until the end of life, as I have mentioned before. Okay, so now going into the battery itself, the battery box premium, which is the product that is compatible with Fronius. The first thing that is, it is quite an identifying factor in the BYD battery box is the chemistry in it. So BYD is the world's largest manufacturer of lithium iron phosphate batteries, and they've been committed to these chemistries since the early stages because it has several characteristic features. One of them is its thermal stability, which is very related to safety. So it was created with the idea of having a very safe battery that couldn't go on fire or generate an explosion, because we understand that this is one of the main concerns for people that are new to the technology, and it is rightly so, because you don't want to have in your car or in your house a device that can become a hazard to you, to your family. So that's why it is the first very important characteristic of the lithium iron phosphate. And other part related also to this thermal stability, it actually provides greater reliability in the long term, which I'll show in the next slide. And the other part that is characteristic of the lithium iron phosphate is that it's created with widely available common materials, non-toxic. So even in the case that the battery has become waste, it actually is not even though it's considered an ADR goods, it's actually not a toxic type of waste. Of course, having BYD behind the product, it has several benefits. And one of the big benefits is the economies of scale. So by being one of the largest manufacturers on electronics, vehicles, cell manufacturing in the world, you can benefit from those economies of scale to invest on having fully automatic manufacturing. So these, on the one hand, is referring to cells. BYD has always been producing the cells in fully automatic production lines, which provides great output, which has an impact in cost, of course, for you, but also it has a great impact on quality. So we wanted to benefit from, we take that advantage and apply it all the way to the finished product in the battery box. So that's why since late 2019, so early 2020, there have been a big investment on manufacturing and manufacturing capacity in the battery box division. And just by the end of 2020, it was already delivering about three times as much as it was in 2019, regardless of the impact of COVID. Still tripling the production, and this is still continuing going forward. And this is not only to be able to supply you supply you to your demand, but also it has impact, of course, on the quality of the product, as these production lines, in order to maintain this output and maintain this manufacturability, they are ISO TS certified, which for those of you that don't know, this is the total quality management standard for automotive. So that's something that something definitely all of you will be benefiting thanks to the higher reliability of the finished product. This is there's two elements to, of course, to quality is the quality you design and you produce for, but also we have the track record to show the long-term reliability of the products. So the same cells as you'll see in the battery box, the same type of lithium iron phosphate chemistry cells, have been used for already over a decade in electric vehicles. That's why we have the the actual life cycle data of these batteries, knowing that they have been on the road for over 1 million cycles and still without having a battery replacement. So it's the same technology that you'll be benefiting from by having a battery box in your house. And then there's an aspect that is probably is very unique to the battery box. The part that is most identifiable in the battery box is its flexibility. And flexibility represents itself in many different ways. The first one, of course, is capacity. So from the smallest battery of 4 kilowatt hours in LVS up to the largest battery, this 983 kilowatt hours by putting 64 LVLs in parallel. So you you have a really wide range of capacity in the BYD battery box, but also other ways of applying that flexibility is the flexibility of application. So these batteries, the same kind of battery, same kind of commissioning process. So if you learn to install a battery for on-grid, you have the same type of battery you can use for off-grid, for single phase, 3-phase, for residential, for commercial, anything that your customers can think of. And especially in markets that are new or they're growing, you don't know exactly which area is going to be strong next. So you now know that you have a very wide range of tools inside the battery box family. Also, very important aspect of this flexibility is the fact that it's also flexible in time, meaning that you can have you can start with a smaller battery and add more batteries later on, months later, years later, without being concerned about the system not working, or without being concerned about capacity in the new batteries being lost to match the old batteries. However, this is very important to mention that it is only truly real in the case of parallel connection. It is still possible to add batteries in series. This is adding more batteries to a single tower in the high voltage. However, if the system has been running for several years, it is possible that you might have lost a bit of capacity, so the new battery would match the capacity of the old ones. So if you want to make sure that the capacity of the new one is maintained, connect another tower in parallel. And as our friends from Fronius have mentioned before, the other very important feature is, of course, these high performance and actually highest performance. The System Performance Index is developed with the idea of developing a universal value of efficiency, and we have been quite fortunate in BYD to have great partners that, thanks to them, we have been #1 for the 3 years that these tests has been running. So we were in 2018, we were #1 with SMA, 2019 with Costal, and this last year we were #1 with Fronius. So summarizing, what is the battery box and the advantages to you? Of course, BYD, the company behind it, not only from the technological point of view, but also the warranty point of view, as this is the company that will take care of your warranty in 8 years down the line, 9 years down the line, 10 years down the line, so you are confident that your back is covered. The second part is the lithium iron phosphate. We're talking about a battery that is very high in safety, plus at the same time these thermal stability that generates a great safety. It also provides you a greater reliability, greater long-term performance. Oh, don't know what happened here. The flexibility. So a battery for the battery for any application that you can think of, any opportunity that a customer might present to you, you'll probably have a battery available for it. And finally, of course, the performance. Not only thanks to the really advanced manufacturing and R&D and BYD, but actually you have the proof with the third-party results, the third-party testing that demonstrates that it's the highest in performance. So now we're going to go into the product itself, into the high voltage battery, which is compatible with the Gen 24 inverters. So we have 2 models, which I'll go in detail later, explaining when to choose one or the other. One is the HVS, which starts from 2 batteries in series, 200-volt batteries in series. So every battery you add on top would add 100 volts in voltage. But please know that the current is constant, so it will be same current, but you'll be adding more voltage. The power will increase with each of the modules. The maximum is 12.8 kilowatt hours in a single tower, and you can have up to 3 of those towers in parallel. In the case of the HVM, it starts with 3 modules of 51 volts, so that's about 153 volts for the smallest system, and you can have up to 8 modules in series, which reach 22 kilowatt hours of capacity in a single tower. So why HVS, why HVM? So on the left-hand side, I have put the voltage of each of the models of the HVS. I multiply by an example current 22 amps, which is the general power for the Gen 24 inverters. So that means that with a 5.1 kilowatt hour battery, you're getting 4.5 kilowatts of power. The 7.7 you get 6.7, etc. So the first thing you see with that is that you are actually getting a fairly close to 1C power, meaning a very high power for a small system. So this is great for small installations where you want to be able to, whenever there's a case of a power cut, you still be able to power a whole house or power all the loads for a brief amount of time. So you provide more power than energy in this case. And another one of the benefits is that it allows you to start quite small. So you can start as small as 5 kilowatt hours with one of these systems, and then if later on you need more capacity, you can add a bit more. But in general, this is for small residential applications. And once you need to go a bit higher, when you have heat pumps, you have electric vehicles, you want to be able to power your loads for several hours using your battery, then the HVM comes in. So the HVM, as it works in a lower voltage per capacity, it actually, you see that the power is more about 0.3, 0.4 of the capacity, meaning that the HVM 8.3 kilowatt hours of capacity, but 3.4 kilowatts of power. The HVM 11 kilowatt hours, but it gives you 4.5 kilowatts of power. It's a slightly lower power to energy ratio, but it allows you to go to a much larger system, being able to having a more future-proof system, because it allows you to go up to 22 kilowatt hours in a single tower, which for most homes, even with electric vehicles, would be more than enough. And then even put three of those towers in parallel to make a much larger system. I want to reinforce the importance of the compatibility list. Please remember that this is helpful to know how to match the voltage range of the battery with the voltage range of the inverter. So please follow this before you design any of the installations, because not every inverter model is compatible with every combination of batteries. And now we go into the installation itself. So it has 3 really simple steps. The first one is putting all the modules together. This is a cable-less installation, so you just need to clip the modules on top of each other, and with just one screw, you can lock them together. Very important, attach them to the wall, because especially in the case of a large HVM, 22 kilowatt hours, it's a very large tower, so it is very important to attach it to the wall. The second step will be the connection. So this is one of the big features of the new premium family, is that all the connections are in the same place. So all the connections are in this connection area. So on the top left-hand side, you have the communication to the inverter. Right below, you have the communication to other batteries if you have them in parallel. On the right-hand side, then you have the internet connection. And finally, you have the power connections completely separated, positive and negative on the right hand side, and the grounding on bottom left. So the grounding is for the casing of the batteries. Very important feature is the internet connection. So this is mostly for service and support. So in case you have an issue, this will allow us to connect and read the detailed information from the battery, and potentially update or modify any parameters that might be causing an issue. So we always recommend to have a direct connection. You just need a cable going from the router to the Ethernet connection at the battery. And another interesting feature and a safety improvement in the product is the safety cover. So the battery will not switch on if the cover is open. There is a sensor in there that only when it's safely locked and fastened, that's when it will allow you to switch on the system switch of the system. If not, you will switch it on and instantly it will go down. So you will have no power, no output voltage coming from the battery. And finally, the commissioning. So commissioning is it's a simple addition to the installation process of batteries. It is just a couple of steps, but very important, especially connected with Fronius inverters. Make sure the inverter is off before you connect the battery. Switch on the battery, commission the battery, and then you can switch on the inverter. If not, you might have a strange behavior. The battery might not be able to finish the commissioning process. If you're having an issue with the commissioning, with starting the battery, remember this feature. Switch off the inverter, switch off the batteries. If necessary, disconnect the cables, connect them back again, and then restart. Make sure that you start the battery first. And then when you start it, you just need to follow the simple commissioning process, which is it has pretty much 2 steps. First one, updating the firmware to the latest version. This can actually be done before you go to site. So in your phone, using the BConnect app, you can simply download the firmware. I would recommend doing this every time before you go to site. And then when you go to site, you just need to click on firmware update. And once you finish updating the firmware, which can take a few minutes, then you can commission just by selecting the model that it is, the inverter that it is, and the type of installation. And once it's done, you'll see the lights, these LED lights in the on button of the battery that will confirm either the battery is okay, the battery is waiting for the inverter, or the battery has any other issues. You have a number of error codes, about 16 error codes that you can just read on the battery LED. And something that for normal installations would not be necessary, but if you're expanding the system later on, please note that when the batteries come from the factory, they come at 30%. And if you're adding a new battery in series, the same current goes through all the batteries, meaning that if the state of charge is very different, it will be very difficult for the batteries to balance later on. So to avoid problems and make sure that you don't have any losses of capacity, it's very important that when you add a battery to an existing tower, that the state of charge of the system is at 30%. So wait until that's the case, and then it will be the smoothest type of extension. And I always like to leaving this to the end, because if there's one thing that I would like you to remember from this presentation is where to find all the necessary resources, because this has been a one hour training. I'm sure you have taken notes of some things. I'm sure you remember some things, but many other things you will forget. So it is very important that you know where to go in the case you have a doubt, in case that you have any issues. So very important is the EFT Systems website. There's also the BYD battery box website, and where you have the general manuals, but in EFT Systems, we have added some additional materials for you. One very important thing that we've added is the service guidelines. This is probably the most important document you should bring with you, besides, of course, the installation ones and the quick installation manual that comes with included inside the battery, because it will help you confirm that you have followed all the steps correctly. It will help you do the necessary checks in case that you have an issue. It will tell you this LED means this, and you should do this operation or take this measurement. And then once you follow the service guidelines, if you still need support, it would have provided you all the information to discuss with us in an efficient way. So that way, when you already speak with us on the phone, or when you open a ticket with us, or you send us an email, you know exactly the question that we're going to be asking you, so we can solve the problem really quickly. And very importantly, at the end of the document is where you have all our contact information. So if you have gone through all those steps, you have tried to do the troubleshooting by yourself, and you still have not been able to solve the problem, then you have a phone number in case you're still on site and you need support right away. And you have our website and our email in case that you have already returned to the office and you need help for the next time you visit. And as additional service tools, BConnect Plus, these are available in the EFT Systems website. And this is a program that you can use to, if you are having problems with the app, you can use this program to set up the battery, do the commissioning in a different way. And for another great benefit is that it allows you to go deep inside the battery. So if you're having any issues, it will allow you to go into the detailed cell data. It will allow you to update not only the BMS and the BMU firmware, which is included in the app, but also allows you to update the parameter table. And it will allow you, very, very importantly, to download the history of alarms. This is also available through the internet connection. So you can either go to site and download this data or check this data if you have an issue, or you can make sure that the system is connected to the internet. So next time when you open a ticket, you include over the serial number of the product, then we can use that serial number to log into your battery and download the same detailed information. So that's why we always insist the internet connection is one of the main pillars to make sure that service and support is smooth, so you can avoid as much as possible revisiting any customer or having to go to site again to fix anything. And finally, very important, we manage all the service cases through our ticket system. So we recommend that even before you start doing installations, you register yourself in support of the EFT systems. This is also in the EFT website, so you will be able to find it there. And as an added bonus, this is not only for you to have an easy way of solving support issues, but for every system you register, you will be getting B partner points. And in the next few weeks, we will already have the shop and the benefits open, so you will start getting benefits from the systems and the installations you have been doing since 2019. And that's it. I finished it just right in the nick of time. So with 3 minutes to spare.
Yeah, thank you, Alvaro, for the presentation. Really useful. And I think that if you agree to it, we will send out the presentation in PDF form to every participant. If you're okay with that.
Of course, fun. Yep.
Yeah. So all of you that are in this webinar will receive it afterwards, the presentation, so that you can read through it again if you want. Just a quick question to Hans Pelzer, if we received any questions regarding the webinar.
Yes, William, we have received quite a lot of questions, basically very often regarding the maximum charging and discharging power from the battery. Therefore, I have to tell you, you can easily calculate that. You know, the maximum amperage of the inverter is 22 amps. If you just multiply that with the battery voltage, you know the maximum charging and discharging power. So, for example, you have 200 volts battery tower with 2 modules HVS. You will have 200 volts multiplied with 22 amps, means 4.4 kilowatts. And with a higher voltage of 400 volts, you will achieve the up to 9 kilowatts charging and discharging power. So that's a very often a good question, because some people ask, should I use a HVS or HVM version? Basically, if you need high power, charging, discharging power, we recommend to use the 10 kilowatt hour HVS battery with 4 modules, or the HVM with 8 modules. But for a residential, usually we use very often the 10 kilowatt hour range, and then it's appreciated to use the HVS version, because then you get more charging and discharging power if you need that. The other things are are quite difficult, different questions. Basically, I can also tell you a little bit our experience from Austria with this solution. In Austria, Germany, where we are very successful, people like this solution because it's three-phase. You have a full backup three-phase solution. You have high power from the battery, which is comparable to other solutions, higher than any other than the standard solution, let's say. You have a very modular system with different sizes, possibilities. Also, the weight is and the installation is very easy to do. So, really, people like this combination of these two components, and we see that more and more people using it. Yeah, so that's it. We will stay. I will stay online. I will still continue to answer questions. Feel free to send us your questions, and I think I could back my words to William for the final words. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Hans, and thank you for everyone that has participated in the webinar. Like I mentioned earlier, we will send out the presentation, and we will stay here in the chat to keep answering the questions. So thank you, everyone, and have a really nice day.